Hi there, welcome to Module 19 where we're going to talk about
Casting rocks
with Ultracal 30. My name is Kara-Lynne Dunn and I'm a dot mandala artist and I would love to welcome you to my channel. So let's get started. Let's look at the molds. I have a bunch of molds here and I have others. So let's get chatting about these molds and then we'll talk about Ultracal 30. So most of the molds I have purchased through the Happy Dotting Company and I'm very satisfied with them. They work great. They've lasted me for years.
and then a couple here I've purchased from Devon Dotting, and they're fantastic as well. For instance, the mold that makes this elephant here.
It's fabulous. That's this one. Okay.
And then their turtle molds are amazing and so fun to paint. Look great when they're done.
And then we've got our ovals over here. That's one that I painted for my hubby. A reminder of our travels. So this is the small rock mold from Happy Dotting Company.
And the small mold is 3 inches in diameter.
And then this is the medium size mold. It's 3.8. That's the rock there. That's the rock we're going to be painting in our next module. Okay, then they have the nice dome shaped one here. So Happy Dotting Company has a chart, which is fabulous. It shows all of the molds and it tells you the weights of the product that you need of the Ultracal 30 and how much water. So everything's by weight here. Don't be measuring like a cup of this, cup of that. Okay, it's all by weight. So these molds here, that one is 4.8 inches wide and the small one is 3.2. Okay, this large rock, it came out first. They just had these two sizes, then they came out with this nice pink one, and it's 4.5 inches wide. The rock is when it's done, and it looks like they have now even a bigger one that's 5.5 inches. This is the tea light holder. I know there are other ones now, but this is the one I have, and it works great, right? You can make yourself a beautiful tea light holder. And yeah, I always varnish the back of my, you know that, I always varnish the back of my stuff first. Okay, and then I picked up a couple of molds. This one here was just from, I think it was the dollar store or something, or Michael's, and it was actually a jello mold, but I have made some beautiful hearts with that and a lot of random dots on that. And then I have things like this. And I had some that didn't have any design. They were just flat. They were great for making tic-tac-toe pieces. And then you would just do your mandala on the front of the tic-tac-toe pieces. Okay, and then also, this is to make pendants. So you just use a paint tray to put your Ultracal 30 in, and then these are tri-dots that would just pop in there once you get your Ultracal 30 mix in there, and you would just leave that showing, and then you'd be able to make your
Pendant molds. And I have a video on how to create them and paint them, and I'll link that for you.
Okay, so lots of really interesting, and I'm sure there is a ton more out there. But today we're going to look at mixing up Ultracal 30, the things that you're going to need.
And my hope is that by the end of this video, you'll be able to successfully make your own rocks too.
Oh, and I'll also use things like this to make like a
plate or a plaque wall hanging.
Instead of a piece of wood, you would have
a cast plaque.
It's like a plate, and you make it and you can hang it on the wall. So I've done that as well. I think the old Cool Whip containers were great. You just have to make sure that you don't get, once they have something stamped in it, that's going to show on your piece as well. Okay, lots of different ideas. Okay, let's look at what we need to work with Ultracal 30. You're going to need your Ultracal 30 powder. Now I get it in giant bags, and then I just put them in big Home Depot buckets with the lids, and that way it keeps and transports a little more easily. And then I sent my husband to storage to get me some to do this. Yeah, it's heavy. I'm going to tell you that. This is what I mix it in.
I just got this at a dollar store and it works great for this. It's plastic, it has a spout, so you can pour it with this, and that's what I mix it in.
Okay, I think I have almost everything here that we're going to need to work with Ultracal 30. So the first thing you need to know is that it is measured by weight. Okay, so you're going to need a scale so you can measure both the water and the Ultracal 30. So with Ultracal 30, the ratio is 100 grams of the Ultracal 30 to 38 grams of water. Okay, so that's pretty specific, right? And it's easy to do. I usually have a couple of silicone spatulas that can help get it out of there and mix it up, get the sides cleaned off. I have wipes handy and generally a damp microfiber cloth, lots of paper towel. It's a messy business, my friends. The molds today that we're going to be using are these 3 molds. Now, these are older ones, so they're not the same colors as they have now. But this is mold number 4. And you will see that on the back of mine, I put the individual number of grams required, and that's the mold number. So that's the larger one. And then this medium-sized one, mold number 2. And then we're going to do one of the smaller ones, mold number 3. Okay, mold number 3 should be yellow in the new set. Mold number 2 is purple in the new set. Okay, friends, let's make some rocks, shall we? I always wear gloves because it's very messy business. And I wear 2 pair because partway through my hands will be messy and I'll need to remove one of the gloves, so possibly 2. So that's why I do it like this. It's things I've learned along the way, I guess. Okay, there we go. Okay, I've got all the things I need here. I have my molds. I have a couple of spatulas. I have 2
plastic 4-cup measuring cups.
I've got a big 4-cupper, and that will be enough water for what we need. And I've got this to mix it in. And I have a little scoop here for my Ultracal 30 powder. Okay, I've got my mixing weight chart from Happy Dotting Company. I've made a chart myself, taking I have each mold, so I've got mold number 4, mold number 2, that's the medium, mold number 3. And as you can see, I've written the ratios right on the molds, just in case I lose my chart. Okay, I've totaled up here the amount of water we need for each mold, and the amount of Ultracal 30 we need for each mold, and the total that comes to. I'm going to make extra, so I'm making enough to go in here. If I have it left over, it'll go in here. If I don't, at least I have enough. I'd rather have more than enough than not enough. So I've added on that as well, and my totals come to 312 grams of water, 825 grams of Ultracal 30, and that comes to 1,137 grams altogether. So the way I do it is I use the powder first. I find it easier to bring this to the total by adding the water a little bit at a time, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is you take a little bit of water, you add some Dawn dish soap. I've already put some in there, and I just mix that around. And this is sort of like surfactant for the molds. You're just gonna pour some in each one of them. Okay, you're gonna swish it around, make sure that all the surfaces are coated. And once that's done, just empty it out and turn it upside down on a cloth while you're waiting to make your rocks. One thing it does is it really helps for demolding, makes it much easier, and also it helps with the bubbles. So we like it. And then this one, I don't think we'll use this one. I end up using a little bit more than most people because I have a little method with my paper towel that I use that helps me to get rid of the bubbles. So, and it ends up using up a little bit of that Ultracal 30. I'll show you when we get there. So, next thing is, we know it's by weight, right? So, this is my mixing container. And we're going to put that on our scale first. And make sure your scale is in grams. Okay? And then we're going to turn the scale on. Okay, so now it's zeroed out. So now the only thing that's being weighed is what we add to this container. So we know we need 825 grams of Ultracal 30, and that's what I'm adding first. So I'm just taking a little scoop here, getting some of my Ultracal 30, putting it in until I get to 825. The other thing about adding this first is trying to take some of this out after if you've gone over your weight, is a lot harder than getting water out.
Alternatively, you could just measure both of the amounts in separate containers and then add them to mix them.
798, and now we're careful, right? Because we need 825. Put a bit in, let it settle. 821. 824, 825. Okay, perfect. Now we need to add our water, and for our water we need 312 grams, but I'm not paying attention to that. I'm paying attention to my total, 1137, because that's what I'm reading on the scale, right? So I'll usually sort of make a little bit of a divot, a well, to get that into, and then I'll start pouring. 936. 1105. So a little bit at a time here. And let it settle because sometimes it'll go up a bit afterwards. 1135. A couple more drops. 1137, bang on. There we go. Okay, now I keep this because when I have utensils and whatnot, I'm going to place them in there if I'm not using them. And then I'm going to grab an old paintbrush. That'll be fine. And now we're done with the scale. It's done its job for us. Thank you very much. Okay, and now let's try and get some of that water onto the Ultracal 30 so it can kind of soak in a bit. Look at those bubbles come up. Okay. And then we're just going to get our hand in there. That's why I put two sets of gloves on. We're going to start mixing it around. We don't go really fast because we really don't want those bubbles in there. But you are going to entrain some of these bubbles, so just slowly. And you know, you could use the spatulas to do this.
But I like being able to feel it.
That you can tell by the feel if things are getting mixed in or if there are any lumps still remaining in it. So we just keep stirring and stirring, and this is not a quick process. And I squish it between my fingers. We just want the lumps out of it, and we want everything to bond together, the Ultracal 30 and the water. Become one. Right? Keep stirring and stirring and stirring. And you just always want to keep checking. I push against the side. That part of that gets rid of some of those bubbles, and part of that, if there are any lumps in there that haven't dissolved yet, gets them into the mix as well. We don't want it lumpy. I know I've poured it sometimes and I'm like, oh, look at those lumps pouring in. And that's when you see it, you know. So it takes a couple of minutes to get this all mixed properly. And it should be like a thick soup, you know. Okay, now I'm going to really work at getting some of those bubbles to the edge. And we do a little bit of tapping. That brings the bubbles up too. And as I get them up, I bring them to the side. And hopefully what I'm doing is popping them on the side. Because if those bubbles are in your mold, especially if they're at the wrong place, especially like say on a tea light holder, if you get a bubble on the rim, it just ruins the whole thing. You either have to fix it by filling it, but it will distort your dots, right? So we don't want bubbles. They are the enemy. And I find the most difficult mold I have to not end up with bubbles somewhere in it is the elephant mold, because it has nooks and crannies and whatnot, right? And this is why we use a paintbrush. And it must be an old paintbrush that you do not care about, because it will be ruined, you know, once you get the cement in there. So I'm thinking that's looking pretty good, and we don't want to wait too long or it's going to start to go off on us, right? And we don't want that. So I'm going to remove the dirty glove, put it right in the garbage that I have right here. Now I'm going to take my spatula and just get everything off the sides. Do a little bit of a stir with the spatula. And once we've got all that done, we're going to get ready to pour. Okay, there are a few bubbles in there, but hopefully they're going to dissipate out. And along the edges of the rocks, you'll often be able to see like little divots in your rocks if you've got bubbles, right? So we do our best to get rid of them. Then I'm going to put this in the water. And now we need to turn our molds over, and they are good to go. So we'll start with the small one. In you go. This is just a slow pour in. And when you get it not quite to the top, just about there, that's when you're going to go in with your paintbrush. And you want to get underneath the rim, brush along the edges to get those bubbles out to the center there. And then we're going to tap. Okay, now I take a piece of paper towel. I do that. So that's how I end up using a little bit more.
But it's great for getting any of the remaining bubbles.
Now we'll go into our big one. And fill it almost to the top. Just leave yourself enough room to get that paintbrush in there. Pour a little bit more, because they do tend to shrink back a bit, so you want to get it right up. I'm going to go in for this one now too. And my paintbrush, get those bubbles from hiding under the rims.
Honestly, doing this literally lifts up all of those bubbles. Fabulous.
Okay, and we'll just top that up. And you see, because I do that paper towel thing, adding the amount for that
Small oval mold. Made sure we had enough for this, but you know what? I think we're going to have enough for the oval mold too.
Now you can see it's starting to set, okay? We can see that.
I used a spatula just to smooth out the top, or rather the bottom.
I want to bring that across because I don't want any like ridges on the bottom like that. And it is starting to set already. That's so fast, eh?
Just doing a little cleanup on my edges, but you do have to be careful because, as I said, it is starting to set.
This like little stuff on the rim is not to worry about, because if it's on there, it will sand off. It's not a big deal. And even though I say that, I still want to get it off. Yeah, so this is the time you have to walk away from it, because otherwise it's going to leave marks on the top. So I have quite a bit left over. I don't think it'll fill this, but hey, we can try, right? So I'm going to use the spatula here. Waste not, want not.
Look at how thick that is. Oh my.
Perfect. And now we wait, my friends. So hopefully those will all turn out well without any bubbles. I will probably demold these in about an hour and a half. So it is 4:35, so maybe at 6 o'clock maybe, we will unmold these. But curing time takes a lot longer, right? It depending on your environment, how humid it is, etc., etc. It can take a week, really. A week would be a good amount of time to let them dry. If you try and paint on them when they are still wet, your paint is not going to adhere properly. Okay, I hear that a lot of times on some of the Facebook groups where people are saying, why isn't my paint sticking? It's probably that reason. It's probably because of painting it before it's really truly dry. Not just dry to the touch on the outside, but dry through and through. Okay, so now point with this. We're going to take paper towel or wipes, whatever, and we're going to get most of that out and into the garbage. This is not good for your plumbing. So there we are, easy peasy, right? Now as these start to set, they're going to get warm. And you can touch the outside of the mold and it will feel quite warm. That means its little exothermal process is still happening. It's still doing what it needs to do. So we don't demold it until the rocks are cooled off. Okay? And let the curing begin. Now, we're only at 20 after 5, and what did we say? 4:35. I'm going to try and unmold this little guy, okay? So he's still warm, but if we get him unmolded now, we can do any sanding that needs done. Beautiful top, beautiful. Okay, just a little bit of sanding on the bottom, and it's so easy when it's this fresh. I don't know if you can call a rock fresh, but.
So I'll continue to sand this until it gets smooth enough for my liking.
Okay, so you can see there's a few little bubble holes, but honestly, they get covered with paint and you don't notice it unless they're big, right? But these guys are not. When you're sanding, you have to make it even, okay? Because you can end up sanding too much on one side and then
it won't be level on the bottom.
So that's quite nice. We like that. We'll put it over here. All right, which one next? Do you want to try this little guy? Okay, beautiful smooth surface. Couple little bubbles there. Not bad though. Easily sandable. And we'll do a little sanding in there as well. Lovely. Another nice one. Let's go with medium. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. Nice smooth rock. I never used to do this. I just used to, however they turned out, that's how they would be painted. And then I started caring about what the back looked like because, you know, it's a whole thing. It's a presentation, right? Now, if you get something on the back, for instance, I made a batch that in retrospect, I needed to have stopped adding to it because it was already starting to go off. Okay, that's nice. And I'll show you. So what happened is, we ended up with these divots. Now I've already sanded and everything, and it's not bad, but you can see there are some divots. So if that concerns you, other options you can have is to put a piece of felt on the bottom or a piece of cork, like a cork coaster sort of thing. But that was my issue, is that I had to, it's just like varnish. You've got to leave it alone at a certain point or you're going to be actually ruining it, right? So, and again, there was a time I wouldn't have even cared about that because it's not really much of anything. But, all right, what do you think? The big guy? He's still quite warm, but I'm going to go for it. They're hard enough. Oops. Okay. Gorgeous top. Gorgeous. Again, it's sometimes hard to get away with absolutely no bubbles, but you can see there's a few little divots there. Again, most of the time, especially if they're small like this, they're going to fill with paint and you will never know. Another option is, I don't know if you know what DAP is. It's like what you use to fill nail holes when you're drywalling. You can always use some of that on here. Some kind of filler and just fill in your holes. Some people use the dust from the sanding of this and a bit of water to fill them in. I mean, that's not as smooth as I would like, but it can be sanded, so. And now is the best time to try and sand it to get it as smooth as you want. Again, you see what it's like when you're done. If you get a base coat of paint on it and decide, you know, am I happy with that or do I have to do something, you know? So you might want to do the felt or the cork or whatever on the bottom. But again, now so you've got to sand that so that every part gets sanded the same, if you know what I mean, so that you've got a level surface still there on the bottom, right? This is helpful too, with a little sanding sponge. Lovely. And as always, I suggest you do this outside. I just don't adhere to my own advice. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Really good.
Sanding sponge for the win.
Nice. Nice batch, kids. Okay, so we're going to let those cure and we're going to love painting them. And we will, for our next module, the last module of the series, by the way, we will be painting
the medium-sized rock that we made today.
So if you want to prepare for the next module, make yourself the medium-sized rock and base paint it in black. And we will be using our flexible stencil to get our lines on. Okay. All right. So there we are. There's our beautiful batch of rocks. They're gorgeous. Now you can see, right, that they have a little raised nib for the center dot. How fabulous is that? Takes away any
stress about finding that center dot.
There we go. Beautiful rocks. Even the bottoms are lovely. And I want to thank you for joining me. Thanks for sticking with me through this beginner series.
I hope you found it helpful.
So thanks so much for joining me. Thank you for your continued support. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you in Module 20. Please remember, keep on dotting. You won't regret it. I promise you that. Bye-bye for now.